This is Cast of Wonders, the young adult fiction podcast featuring stories of the fantastic. Welcome. Episode 193 for January 27th, 2016. Every year in January, Cast of Wonders takes some time off to look forward to the new year and look back over the previous year and share some of our favorite episodes. As part of joining the Escape Artist family, this year we're pulling out all the stops. We're running 10 staff pick episodes over the month, each one hosted by different members of the Cast of Wonders crew. Hello, this is Jeff Height, the assistant editor. I've been with Cast of Wonders for about 2 years now, and I can tell you that I am extremely excited about joining the Escape Artists team. It is going to make Cast of Wonders, which is already fantastic, just that much better. My staff pick for 2015 is episode 170, Princesses Don't Breathe Fire, by Serena Dory, originally aired on July 17, 2015, and narrated by myself and several of my children. Now, we have a tale to tell.
When Princess Draciona was born, it was obvious something wasn't quite right. She had emerald eyes and viridian hair. Most unusual of all was her scaly, moss-tinted skin. "This baby looks like a dragon," said Prince Rapunzelson, named after his great-grandmother. No, insisted his wife, Princess Penelope. "That's just green eczema. She'll grow out of it." Prince Rapunzelson nodded and decided to let his wife worry about it. He would rather be thinking about battle. But Princess Draciona did not grow out of her eczema. To make matters worse, when she started to teeth, she grew sharp, dagger-like fangs. When she didn't get her way, sometimes she breathed fire. "Princesses do not breathe fire just because they don't get their way," said Rapunzelson, who was king by now. Years passed, and Queen Penelope and King Rapunzelson had 3 more children. They all had brown eyes, brown hair, and smooth, creamy skin. They didn't have so much as a patch of eczema. As Draciona grew older, this became more of a problem. The hue of her skin changed from moss to lime green. The court often whispered about her and implied treasonous things about her mother's behavior with dragons before she'd been rescued. No, it's simply an enchantment or a fairy curse," Queen Penelope said. And who were her subjects to argue with her? She was queen, even if her firstborn was a bit scaly. One fine spring day, as Draciona sat in the flower garden, playing dolls with her brother and sisters, the court jester cartwheeled over and made up an annoying song, as he often did to poke fun at people.
"Look at Prince Frederick, what a shame, it makes one sick that he plays a little girl's game."
He poked Draciona's younger brother with his staff and made him cry. Draciona got so angry she gobbled up the jester in one bite.
"I wish I could do that,"
said Prince Frederick as he wiped away tears. "Princesses do not eat jesters just because they don't like their jokes," King Rapunzelson said. Draciona didn't feel bad about it. The jester's meter had been off, and his rhyming wasn't very good. Draciona's problem became more serious as she grew older, for no matter what healer or magician the king and queen sent for, they couldn't find an ointment to clear up her skin condition. When Draciona turned 16, her father made appointments with nobles to court her so she might one day be married. The nobles were so pompous and annoying that Draciona ate a few of them. "Princesses do not eat their suitors," her father warned.
"Yes, I know,"
Draciona said, smoke fuming from her nose.
"Nor do princesses have green hair, green eyes, and breathe fire or have eczema that looks like dragon scales."
"If you don't cease this unprincess-like behavior, I'll lock you in a tower for the rest of your life, or until a knight comes to rescue you and take you off my hands." King Rapunzelson patted her on the head. "Now, go talk to your mother about your behavior. I'm busy planning battle to acquire more lands." In the privacy of her mother's chamber, Draciona cried.
Why am I so different from other girls? Why can't I have brown hair, brown eyes, and creamy skin like my brother and my sisters?
She hated how people looked at her like she was a freak. Worse yet, she dreaded disappointing her parents.
Why can't I be normal?
Queen Penelope stroked her daughter's hair and tried not to get her sleeves singed when her daughter's breath became too fiery. Because you're not a normal girl.
Father can't stand me, and the court whispers about me and says I'm enchanted by a curse, and...
No, there's no curse. It's a bit more complicated. Queen Penelope cleared her throat. I think it's time you meet your real father, Frederick the Dreaded Dragon. Frederick? Draciona's younger brother was named after some dragon her mother once had an affair with? Draciona was a princess and had lived a sheltered life in the walls of the castle. She couldn't imagine how a human woman and a giant lizard could have conceived a child, nor did Draciona want to know. Princesses don't have quests, King Rapunzelson said. All the same, Queen Penelope packed Draciona a small satchel and said goodbye to her daughter. Draciona traveled across the kingdom toward the Mountains of Doom, through the Caves of No Return, and into the home of Frederick the Dreaded. She was stumbling through the darkness of the cavern when she walked into someone.
Excuse me,
said the man.
Who goes there?
My name is Princess Draciona, daughter of Penelope and King Rapunzel. Actually, my mother says I'm daughter of Frederick the Dreaded of Upper Valdor.
A torch on the wall suddenly exploded with light. A handsome young man with long dark hair wearing chainmail stood before her. Draciona placed her hands on her hips.
And who are you? A knight to slay my father?
I would never dream of killing dragons, especially not Frederick. I am Rob Greentree, court magician, chief librarian, and official lackey of Frederick the Dreaded, and I happen to be his cousin's wife's sister's nephew, adopted but orphaned son.
A magician? Why are you wearing chainmail?
I was cleaning the kitchen, and some of the mice are quite ferocious.
As a magician, you must have knowledge of herbs. Do you happen to know of any ointments for clearing up green eczema?
Draciona asked. Rob shook his head.
No, do you know someone with green eczema?
Me, of course.
Draciona crossed her arms. The young magician squinted his eyes and peered closely at her.
You don't have green eczema. You have a mild case of dragon scales.
Is there a cure?
He shrugged.
Not that I know of.
Well then, you better take me to my father.
Rob led Draciona through dark and winding tunnels before they came to a large room lit by hundreds of sconces. Treasure surrounded a green hill in the center of the cavern. Draciona could now see Rob's hair wasn't black, but bright green. His eyes were the same viridian hue. She could only imagine what King Rapunzelson would say about that. At least Rob didn't have eczema.
Ahem,
said Rob.
A visitor, daughter of Princess Penelope, and, you, apparently.
The green hill shifted and turned. A dragon, the size of her room, turned his big puppy dog eyes away from the book of poetry he was reading. A grin spread across Frederick's face. Despite the rows of sharp teeth, he seemed more cute than menacing. It was difficult to resist the urge to pet his head like one would a favorite dog. Frederick bowed his head.
I'd hoped we'd meet someday.
His voice was deep and gravelly, rumbling like thunder.
How is Penelope?
Draciona exchanged polite conversation for a while before explaining.
My mother sent me here because I told her I wished to be a normal girl. But the problem is, I have green, scaly skin.
Is that the only indication of being a dragon?
Well, sometimes I accidentally eat people who annoy me, and I breathe fire at inconvenient times. Also, I seem to be unusually strong. Can you help me become a normal princess?
It sounds like you haven't learned to control the dragon side of yourself. It can be difficult the first 50 years.
His green scales turned pink and smooth. His enormous tail receded, and his muzzle shortened, and he shrank. Within moments, a man with midnight black hair, bright green eyes, dressed in dark green, stood before her. Somehow, he still reminded Draciona of a puppy. Frederick's ability to change shape explained a few things, and from his handsome features, Draciona understood his mother's attraction to him. He said,
If you can behave as a human, I believe it is possible for you to overcome your dragon side. I will give you a quest to bring out your princess nature. If you can complete it, your dragon scale should clear up and you can be a normal girl.
Hope bloomed in Dracula's chest at the idea of being normal and not an embarrassment to her family. That, and she didn't particularly like the idea of being locked in a tower for the rest of her life. Frederick went on,
But if you fail your quest, the green hue of your skin will worsen, and you will be doomed to spend the rest of your days as a dragon. Are you certain you wish to go on with this quest?
Dracula swallowed and nodded.
But first, you must be tired from your journey. I will give you some time to rest, and Rob will prepare you something to eat.
Dracula rested and then ate a meal with her father and Rob. Though Frederick remained human, he had an unusually large appetite. With the caring concern of a long-lost father, he asked about her life in the castle. Though his tone and manner were light and friendly, there was a shrewdness in his eyes, as if he were watching her far closer than he let on. The following day, Frederick announced,
I have finished deciding your quest. I will give you 3 tasks, and if you can complete them in a princess-like way, your dragon nature will clear up. Rob will accompany you to take note of your progress and report back to me. Your first task awaits.
Dracula and Rob set out away from the mountains and toward the farms and rolling hills. The balmy wind brought with it the scent of hay and manure. They stopped at a dilapidated barn full of straw. Rob unrolled the scroll and read,
Your first task is to spin straw into gold.
What? That doesn't sound like a princessly task.
That's what it says, and Frederick is very wise. I'm sure he knows best.
Dracula looked at the piles of straw. She had no idea how to spin, as all the spindles in the kingdom had been hidden after some other princess's freak accident with one.
This is impossible. I can't spin without a spindle, and even if there was a spindle, it would take magic to turn straw into gold.
Rob snapped his fingers.
That's it! I'll use magic!
He muttered a few words and the straw turned into gold. Dracula grew very angry. A cloud of smoke puffed out of her nose.
This is my quest, not yours. I have to solve the problem without your help.
When she spoke, fire shot out of her mouth and engulfed Rob's head. Dracula jumped back.
Sorry,
Rob blinked back at her. Not a hair on his head was singed.
No worries, I'll simply change the gold back into straw.
And he did.
How is it that my fire didn't harm you?
I am a magician, and I'm a teeny bit dragon myself.
Dracula turned back to the straw.
Well, there is no spindle here, and it would be cheating if I used your magic to make one. How will I spin straw into gold?
Perhaps I may be of service,
said a creaky voice. Dracula turned, astonished to see a gnome with sharp teeth rubbing his hands together.
I can spin the straw into gold for a price. For you, my dear, I will do this for the low, low price of your firstborn child.
Dracula rolled her eyes.
That isn't a low price at all.
Yes, it is. Usually I charge a trove full of jewels. But a firstborn child, well, you can have another.
That's just despicable. Rob, I haven't had lunch yet, and I'm feeling hungry. Do you think if I ate just one of the man's legs, it would be all right? After all, he has another.
The gnome made a face and slinked away. By now, an idea was forming in Dracula's mind.
Can I turn straw into gold using other methods?
I suppose, but I'll have to revise the wording of the first task.
Rob took out an inkwell and scratched out part of the task and proceeded to write on the scroll. Dracula used a cart to haul the straw back into the mountains. The gnomes and dwarves, renowned for their metalwork, lived in pleasantly warm, smoky caves. With their help, she was able to light a fire with her breath, melt some gold, and dip the straw into it. The molten metal burned the straw away, leaving hollow tubes. The gnomes didn't ask for her firstborn child as payment. They simply asked her to keep their fires going with her breath, and charged the gold to King Rapunzel's open account. Rob scribbled down some notes on the scroll.
Your next task awaits at a barbecue.
It took a few days to find a barbecue, but when they did, Rob announced the royal presence to the merry party, and she was quickly invited. Then he told her task.
You must sit here and eat only a salad. And because you are a princess, you cannot breathe fire. And if anything goes wrong at the barbecue, you must not help. Remember, you are a helpless maiden.
Draciona could see that this task was going to be more difficult than the last. Though she liked vegetables, refraining from eating meat at a barbecue was exceedingly difficult. Draciona stared at the pig on the spit, her mouth watering.
Perhaps some bacon bits on my salad would be all right?
The chunks of crisp pork happened to be the size of her fist, but Rob said nothing. He simply scratched something on the scroll. When it began to rain, the ladies in their fine clothes wailed about getting wet. Some of the men took out a tent. Draciona said,
That looks like it's gonna fall over. Why don't I just help with...
Ahem,
said Rob.
Oh yes. Why don't I just sit in the corner and bat my eyelashes and act helpless like a princess is supposed to?
Draciona sat in the corner as the men struggled with the tent. Being a princess wasn't easy. When the fire went out due to the rain, the wood was too wet to relight. "Oh, whatever shall we do? My picnic will be ruined if there isn't enough meat to feed my guests," said the host. Draciona glanced at Rob. He was helping himself to a jello salad. She discreetly breathed fire on the wood, causing it to dry and light. "It's a miracle," said the prince. Rob raised an eyebrow. He wrote something down on the parchment. When the barbecue was finished, he read from the scroll.
The last task is to find a prince with some ailment or curse that you can cure by kissing him.
Unfortunately, the prince hosting the barbecue was in perfect health. They traveled all the next day until they came to a swamp that smelled of sulfur. A chorus of ribbits greeted them.
I'm sure you will find a grateful prince here who will be glad to be cured.
Draciona didn't know much about princes or where they liked to spend their free time, but a swamp seemed an unlikely place. As it happened, the swamp was leaping with princes. The first prince they found was a frog because a witch had cast a spell on him. But when Draciona tried to kiss him, he hopped away as fast as he could. The next few princes were the same. Draciona used all of her stealth and muscle to catch the next prince, splattering swamp muck all over herself in the process. He was a toad, figuratively, but otherwise looked normal.
You're a prince? What's wrong with your face? It looks like you have green eczema. Are you supposed to cure me, or am I supposed to cure you? 'Cause if that's the case, it's going to take a whole lot more than one kiss to cure you.
Draciona accidentally ate him. She blamed it on her hunger. A salad with bacon bits the day before was hardly enough for a growing young woman. The last prince they found was a toad, literally and figuratively. He was rude and disgusting and green and warty. "Hey, baby, want a big sloppy kiss? Take a look at this tongue action." He caught a fly and ate it.
I prefer being called Draciona to baby,
she said. "Sure, whatever you say, baby. I dig green girls. You want to make out?" He ate another fly. Draciona looked at Rob.
I'll take him away before you accidentally eat him.
Draciona sighed and sat on a lichen-covered log. She didn't think she could blame the witches who cast spells on these princes. She didn't want to kiss any of them. Not that they were exactly lining up to kiss her either. Was she really that dreadful to look at? When Rob returned, he asked,
Shall we hunt this swamp some more or try another swamp?
Are all princes really so horrible? I thought there were some decent ones out there, but apparently not the ones with curses. I want to cure my skin condition, but can't stand the idea of kissing someone with a toad-like personality. And of course, once they see my scales, they definitely don't want to kiss me.
Rob sat down next to her.
There's nothing wrong with dragon scales. They're kind of cute and very useful.
He drew his knife and stabbed her in the arm. Draciona shrieked in surprise. A burst of fire erupted from her mouth and engulfed Rob. He remained unburned. Her arm was unscratched, though Rob's knife was slightly bent.
See how useful that is? And I bet you could survive flames too.
That's very well, but I don't think princesses are usually useful. I've completed my other two tasks, more or less. I need to think of a way to accomplish the third, and then I'll look normal.
Well, if it's that important to you, I can make a slight revision to the task, so that it doesn't have to be a prince who you kiss.
Draciona placed her hands on her hips.
And just who do you think would be willing to kiss me in the middle of a swamp?
His cheeks turned pink.
A magician librarian?
Draciona blinked. That was most unexpected. Rob was a bit unusual looking himself with bright green hair, but he was handsome. And more importantly, he didn't have the personality of a toad.
But I have to kiss someone with an ailment or a curse, so I can cure it.
Rob scratched his chin.
Well, I did stub my toe at the barbecue yesterday. Maybe if you kiss me, it will go away? Then you won't fail your test.
That sounded reasonable. She leaned forward and kissed him. And kissed him. And kissed him. She wanted to make sure to cure his stubbed toe after all. Draciona was surprised how pleasant it was. It certainly made her toes tingle.
Is that what it's supposed to be like kissing a prince?
She asked.
I don't know. I've never kissed a prince before.
Rob said. Draciona laughed.
How's your toe?
Completely cured.
He scratched a few notes on the scroll. On their journey back to the cave of Frederick the Dreaded, Draciona couldn't help thinking how refreshing it was to not have to worry about Rob being harmed if flames accidentally shot out of her mouth. And he was helpful and nice, and never complained about her dragon scales. She never had an inclination to eat him either. Rob caught her sneaking furtive glances at her a few times and smiled. Draciona blushed.
Ouch! I think I stubbed my other toe,
said Rob, hopping up and down, holding his foot. A mischievous smile crossed his face.
Maybe you could use your princessly nature to cure it?
Draciona kissed him, not minding at all. When they returned to the cave, Rob handed Frederick the list. Draciona's father looked over the scroll.
I see Rob took the liberty of making a few changes. You cast straw into gold? Interesting interpretation. I see Rob added that the salad could have bacon bits. Fair enough. Your last task was to cure a prince's ailment or curse by kissing him.
There was a long pause. Frederick's gaze flickered to Rob.
I see you had some difficulty finding an adequate prince.
Rob nodded, a sheepish grin on his face.
Well, you did try your best in these endeavors, and it was Rob's judgment that you passed your quest. Though I don't know if I would have been as generous.
Really?
Draciona had been sure Rob had failed her on the first two tests.
So my green eczema will go away?
If you can continue your princessly behavior and refrain from letting your dragon hat rule your actions, your dragon scales should clear up. Now all we have to do is find a tower to lock you in. And you can wait to be rescued by a prince or a knight who you can reward with a kiss. Then you can be married and live happily ever after. Which means being locked in a castle for the rest of your life, doing nothing other than having children, and donning your husband's socks.
Draciona scrunched up her nose. That didn't sound very happily ever after to her.
But why do we need a prince to rescue me? I could rescue myself.
I'm sure you could, but that wouldn't be very princessly.
Draciona didn't like the idea of kissing another prince, even if it was one who didn't look like a frog.
Is there any chance a magician librarian could rescue me, and I could, kiss him instead?
Certainly not. Princesses must be rescued and marry knights or princes, never magician librarians. And you must continue to eat salads, as princesses eat as lightly as birds. Then your dragon scales should completely vanish.
This just kept getting worse and worse.
But I don't want to eat just salads and wait for a prince to rescue me, and I prefer magician librarians to princes, and I really don't want to darn some prince's socks.
But you said you wanted to be rid of your... what did you call it? Eczema?
Draciona glanced at Rob.
Rob said my dragon scales are cute.
Rob nodded.
Did he now? Somehow that doesn't surprise me.
Frederick gave Rob a meaningful look. He turned back to Draciona.
Well, If you want to be a princess, you must behave as a princess, so your dragon scales will clear up. If you want to be a dreaded dragon, you must read books, learn magic, become wise and useful, spend time with me so I can teach you to change your shape at will, and occasionally go to barbecues and be in charge of the fire when needed. And if anyone annoys you, you can eat them.
That sounds kind of nice, actually.
Frederick winked at her.
Fortunately for dragons, there are also no rules against kissing magician librarians. On occasion.
This story is incredibly complex, and I like that about it. It comes across as a very simple fairy tale, but the more you listen to it, the more depth there really is in it. And the great part about it is that it does come across as a simple fairy tale, and so it can be enjoyed by the youngest of audience. The youngest child in this recording was 9 at the time of the recording, but her younger brothers and sisters were still listening in as we did it. They were giggling at all the funny parts and thought the whole story was just hilarious. And yet, there's so much more to it. This is a finding your family story. This is a understanding that what you want may not actually be what is best for you. It's about understanding who you are and understanding what that means to the greater world and figuring out that sometimes family isn't exactly what you think it is. This story has tickled me over the 6 or 7 years that I've been able to read it, and I'm so glad that I got to share it with you again. Cast of Wonders relies on your donations to pay our authors to bring you the best in young adult fiction week after week. If you've enjoyed this story, please consider making a donation using the PayPal link on our site. Every one-time and monthly subscription helps, and you have our heartfelt thanks. You can share your appreciation for this story by leaving us a review on iTunes, sharing the episodes with your friends or family, or discussing it on our forums. We are also at Cast of Wonders on Twitter. Come by and say hello. Cast of Wonders is a production of Escape Artists Incorporated and is brought to you by the creative team of our editor, Marguerite Kenner, our artist, Barry J. Northern, audio producers, Jeremy Carter and Ricky Lacoste, and our slush reading team, Danny Daly, Alex Goebel, Catherine Inskeep, Sally Gill, Melissa Bugay, Olivia Denholm, Ellery McAllister, and I am your humble assistant editor, Jeff Height. Our episodes are released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. You can share this episode, but don't change it or sell it. Our theme is Appeal to Heavens by Alexei Nav from musicalley.com. Thank you for listening.